We have a thirst for fuel and a need for speed. It's the Pod Boys. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, but you can call me Bubba.
I'm going Maximum Overdrive. I'm Ben Sheets.
Well, get on that there with the depot and we're gonna get them trucks going. Hey, fuel them up. You chuck them up. Hi, I'm Cleveland Mosier.
Man, I thought for sure one of y'all was going to use the Return of the Mac, and that's why I didn't say it. I didn't want to steal it from you.
The Return of the Mac truck.
The Return of the Mac truck. But we out here, and we are on wild amounts of cocaine today.
We just did our last rail, and we're ready to
just
rail on about this movie.
Just snorted a whole mountain like Tony Montana, and we've sat down and watched Stephen King's magnum opus, Maximum Overdrive.
His maximum opus, Sir
Yes.
Drive. His maximum operdrivis.
His visual cocaine, so to say.
The only film ever directed by Stephen King in 1986. Oh boy, this movie was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Last episode, we previewed this a little bit, and I said, much like Charles Lawton, he was one and done because...
Yeah.
How do you top this?
How do you top this?
You know, like, I want to preface this whole review by saying, I think this is a bad movie, but it's a hell of a fun movie.
Yeah, this is for sure one of those so bad it's good movies. Absolutely.
Well,
I had a great time watching this.
While we're mentioning our prefacing from last time, it also ended with you saying that you had picked Maximum Overdrive as your choice and me swearing at you loudly.
Yeah.
And I want to give some backstory behind that before we dive into the subtlety and the delightful nuances of this movie. But I actually read the short story that Maximum Overdrive was based on way back in high school, a decade plus ago, and loved it. I think it's in his Graveyard Shift book. I believe it's titled simply Trucks. And it's great for very different reasons.
Okay.
And it brought a lot back while I was watching this, but after I read it, I heard later on, I didn't even realize that Stephen King himself had adapted it into a movie. And I looked it up, and the articles I found all said that it was Stephen King's only movie because the film was so bad. You know, he just refused to make any films afterwards. So I just got it imprinted in my mind. It's like, okay, I liked the short story a lot, but clearly the adaptation is bad, and never bothered to watch it. I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad you picked this movie,
that's
Ben.
the thing. So Stephen King was at he calls it his rock bottom. You know, he was at the peak of his alcoholism and cocaine addiction. And woo boy, does the cocaine addiction show in this movie.
Absolutely. Like this
everything is turned up to 150 with this one.
Yeah, and like seemingly important things are completely glazed over in like a sort of hyperactive mania. It's awesome. I like a lot of my favorite Stephen King books are from his so-called rock bottom phase, the late 70s up through the mid 80s.
They're largely his bestsellers too.
They are stuff like It and Pet Sematary, and I think The Stand. The Stand might have been on the end of that, but I mean, he was working on The Dark Tower through some of that. I think Cocaine Stephen King is great. Not every idea that he has in his books lands. Like, some of it is obviously just sheer manic energy just on the page, but I think he's pretty good. However, that being said, this movie completely lacks the nuance of a lot of his writing from this period.
And the funniest thing to me was that the short story does a good job with that.
I'm sure it does.
If I'd watched this film without knowing that it was directed by Stephen King, I would be furious at the director for so like poorly adapting this work. But it's the guy who made it. Like, it's amazing.
I know.
And I do love that too. Like that it's he just decided to completely scrap the style of the story, which is taken much more seriously. I'll dive into that
He
more,
turns
but
it into 80s schlock.
Yeah, so just to summarize the movie really quick, the idea is Earth gets in the trail of a comet and it turns all electronics. It gives them a mind of their own, and makes them attack humans.
And of course, all of this is in the opening title card.
Yes.
Well, over the face of Earth.
Yes, we
Right.
get a really cheesy shot of...
It's a still that's like really poorly imposed. Like the flatness of the Earth is like a little warped. You can just tell it's like an image that they're filming.
I just love,
Hokey as
honestly,
shit.
for this kind of movie, give me that title card at the beginning, give me the setup I need, and jump right in, and that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
I would not have wanted a slow build in this movie.
I agree.
Like, once we get to Earth, we get a title card that gives our location, which is Wilmington, North Carolina, about 2 hours from where we are now.
Shout out to Wilmington.
Shout out NC. We see Stephen King himself in a little cameo as a man walking up to a bank, and the teleprompter thing above the bank, I forget what those things are called exactly. It just keeps flashing, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And then he puts his card into the ATM, and the ATM just says, you're an asshole. And it just is asshole, 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 asshole. He's like, hey, honey, this ATM just called me an asshole. I thought that was the perfect way to start this movie.
Excellent,
I think
yeah.
for this type of movie, like, it doesn't feel like it was made with an intent to like make a really great film. I think Stephen King was very comfortable just like snorting crazy lines and just like getting out there and just doing fun shit.
Well, that's the thing. This movie hits the perfect balance of being schlocky as shit and leaning into its schlock, but without being super self-aware.
Yeah, I think there is plenty of a degree of self-awareness, but the movie isn't like nodding to that.
It's conveniently self-aware where it's good to be, like where it's funny.
Yeah.
It knows like when to deliver like big punches to keep the laughs rolling, but half the time there's no way a rational mind like was fucking like editing.
Absolutely not.
Like,
But
some of the
they're
dialogue.
never winking and nodding to the camera. or
No,
anything
and
thank God
that,
for it.
Like they're not being super self-aware. Some of the stuff is pacing-wise very self-aware. Like
Yeah.
Jesus, the film gives no, and when you say no setup, like it doesn't just like start with everything right off the gate. We get no character building at all in this film. It's just archetypes are presented and immediately either killed off or not, and then it cuts to another scene.
That's true.
And like
Yeah.
it just, there's no clean cut pacing between scenes. We're just on to the next thing. There's seriously one sequence where a character like the love interest walks up to the main character, just says okay, and then it cuts to another scene. That's it. She just says okay. There's nothing else. She just like
it's
walks
that
up, okay.
absolute
Just cuts.
manic parallel action, weird editing choices.
Yeah.
Like other people were having dialogue in a
wild.
different scene. It just cuts to that okay, and then it goes to something else. They were somewhere like what?
For like the first half of the movie, it does that thing it does in a lot of disaster movies where you have like separate groups of characters that are eventually all brought together in a single location. But the way the film is edited,
So messy.
There's no kind of coherent transitions from one group of people to the next. It's just all hard cuts at times where it's like there shouldn't be a cut. You're just jumping around so much until finally everybody does get together, and honestly that's when I thought the movie got kind of boring.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Here's the thing, like with that sort of film, one of the things that makes that uniting of characters interesting is how they interact with each other.
Right.
You get to know X characters, and then when you see different characters meet, you think, oh, how are they going to interact? Like, how is that Petri dish experiment going to go? Here, the characters are so flat that whoever is in what scene doesn't mean anything.
Well, exactly what it feels like is that every time something narratively needs to be done, it's like they just pick characters at random from the batch they have. There's no like linking chemistry with any of the characters. I mean, you have the married couple who kind of have something, I guess, but then you have Emilio Estevez and the love interest drifter chick who have never met before. They come together and they just immediately are like a couple now.
Yeah,
like there's no sort of like actual chemistry between them. It's like,
and it's like at a small town truck stop. So when she comes up to him and starts talking to him, I'm like, oh, I guess they know each other? Like, I even said that. I was like, are they, and then they imply, like, later on in the scene that they don't. And I was like, Why did you call him hero? He hasn't done anything. What is going on?
You know what this movie is in every way? It is a child, like a 4 or 5 year old, like playing with their toys. Everything in the movie is constructed that way. Like with those characters, like, oh, here's Barbie and Ken smashed together.
True.
Everything is like build up some set with your toy blocks and then take your plastic Mack truck and smash it into it. Like everything that happens in the movie is that.
But
and I
the
love
set
it.
pieces are so much fun.
The stunts are incredible.
I want to talk about one of my all-time favorite sequences from this movie, and that's the vending machine with the
I
Little League.
loved that.
So,
Oh my God.
the kids in the Little League team just won their game, so the coach goes to buy them all sodas,
soda
and it just
pops.
starts shooting soda cans at him, hits him in the nuts, and then ends up hitting him in the face and just brutally killing
Well, right,
him.
that's the thing. It starts out as like a pretty classic slapstick gag,
Yeah.
where the vending machine hits him in the balls and he, falls to his knees, and then it like fires and hits him in the head. But the thing is, where it differs from slapstick comedies is that it keeps hitting him in the head. It keeps firing soda cans at him until his head has like a bloody crater in it.
Well,
like,
on top of that, it starts shooting at all the Little League kids as well.
Oh,
in
that's the
distance.
funniest shit. And the one kid who's like ends up being one of the quote unquote protagonists, like he takes his catcher's mask and uses it to cover his face so he's protected to try to get to his coach.
Like he's like in trench warfare, like
And he's
while,
like
soda bottles
crawling.
are flying
I
over
thought
his
that was
head.
great. And then he gets up and runs. But my favorite part about that is that there's just a couple of kids just like lying on the ground, like yards away, like. They would not have been incapacitated by
and
those soda cans.
Even before Stephen King gives us time to process that, we have one kid running in the outfield and a fucking steamroller comes through and just runs him over.
Like
and this pulps him, and we see it too.
Yeah.
like I feel
Child
like
death in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
like the prompter at the top of the bank that says "fuck you" at the beginning of the movie should have just said, "Don't think about it."
I mean, it basically is. It's like the first thing you see in the movie is just be like, "Fuck you, you're an asshole." It's like if you try to come into this movie critically and analyze it, you're gonna have a bad time. Fuck you, asshole. I think it's a great tone to set for the movie. It got me.
I can see
it got me in the
why.
perfect headspace for it. Like it got me like, this is a movie that I need to just be having fun with and don't need to try to analyze like what makes it good or bad.
And I can
know?
see why it pissed a lot of people off, because they're going in expecting Stephen King, who is like known for nuance and subtlety and like
And horror,
established themes,
yeah.
and actually, setting the tone for horror and atmosphere. And he clearly didn't want to do that with this movie, and I respect that a lot. Honestly,
I respect it too. One of the things I find so strange about Stephen King is that I would say more than half of the adaptations of his works are bad films. There's definitely more bad ones than good ones. But the only one that Stephen King himself personally disdains is The Shining, which is one of the best.
Yeah. It's so funny to me that he said that like in 80,
Yeah.
right, about The Shining,
And then he went on to make
a few
this
years
movie.
later he
Right.
makes this one.
And maybe there was something about that made him decide to not make movies anymore. Like, man, I talk shit on The Shining, and then I made this. Fuck, I can't do this anymore. Maybe that has something to do with it. And I won't go into The Shining too much because we'll do an episode on that. And I have thoughts on why Stephen King doesn't like the film adaptation and why I think he's justified not liking it, even though it is a great film. But it's so fucking funny to me that like the vast amount of trash Stephen King adaptations he doesn't have a problem with. Like he doesn't talk shit about. It's just like, fuck The Shining.
Yeah, just to give a nice broad stroke of the film, the majority of it takes place at the truck stop. And,
Yes.
all sorts of crazy action ensues as all of the inanimate objects try and kill the people, particularly the automobiles.
Not the automobiles, the trucks specifically, the 18-wheelers.
You mentioned earlier that the movie kind of gets a little boring and slows down at that point. I will say, in defense of it, they do a decent job of giving us some good set pieces every like 15, 10, 15, 20 minutes.
That's the point that I was going to make qualifying that, because I do think it gets boring, but it never stays boring long enough to really drag. Every time I'm starting to get like, oh my God, please give me something, anything, then it will do something fun.
Yeah.
I think it does suffer a lot in those segments, like trying to figure out how to escape the truck stop.
Part of it is
going to rescue the Bible salesman who's
Yeah.
like dying in the ditch, which doesn't really end up having any sort of payoff. Like they finally get the kid then. I think all of that stuff is pretty uninteresting.
Well,
but
I think it's a problem of in the first 20 minutes they set such a
They do
pace
so
that
much
they
good stuff.
can't keep up. There's no way they could keep up.
I
with
love
that
I love the
pace.
part where the kid is like riding his bike down like the street, and he's just seeing all of the carnage that the machines have wrought. Like somebody's crashed into a tree. There's the dog that has been killed by a little kid's remote control police car driving into its mouth. There's a lady like half hanging out her window with like a blow dryer in her hand. That part reminded me a lot of the part in The Happening where they go onto
Yeah.
like in the suburbs and there's just like all of the people dead. But I thought that setup was great. And there's so many things blowing up and getting knocked down in this movie.
The explosions in this movie are fantastic.
I was blown away, pun intended.
Hell
like
yeah, I was really staggered by the budget of this film, and I know that Stephen King was at like a peak moment financially in his career,
he
and
had
he was
clout
very
at
well
that time,
proven
for
by
sure.
the industry, but he wasn't proven by the film industry. And I'm just amazed that they gave a first-time director, well-known or not, that much of a budget. That just is very wacky to me and just seems incredibly irresponsible. And it's great. Like, it's excellent, but wow, that is just, you would give that much money to this film for someone who hasn't directed before.
Thank God for it,
once
though.
in a lifetime flashpoint type of thing, because I don't think any time before this or after this that would have happened in the same type of budget,
Right.
for any first time.
Oh yeah, because we're in like Cannonball era.
It was, it was
where
the
this
peak,
kind of shit happens.
It was
a
the
lot
peak
in
era
Hollywood.
for it. The mid 1980s, when the entire film industry was fueled exclusively by cocaine.
Yep.
Like Stephen King was not the only person in the film industry who was just out of his mind all the time.
Oh yeah, and a lot of great stuff, came out of that.
Oh,
like,
totally.
Throwing these like large budgets at these nobodies.
And like I said, like thank
amazing.
God that this film had the budget that it did, because it's what makes it so much fun. Yeah. Like it absolutely appeals to the 5-year-old in me that just wants to build block houses and smash my cars into them.
Oh yeah,
Like,
it works so well for that.
There's so much of that. The explosions are pulled off so well, where the one truck is chasing the married couple and they run it off the road and it explodes. It's on fire before it goes off the jump and then explodes in slow motion. Or when at the end, when the ice cream truck is coming at them and they shoot it and it flips and explodes and like almost slides into the camera. I was just hollering for all of that.
This movie has 2 modes. What? And whoa!
Yeah.
Those are
that's accurate.
This one was very binary. You were either going like, what the fuck? Or,
Oh shit!
Sometimes both at the same time.
Yeah. What?
Like,
Whoa!
One of my favorite set pieces, they do it right at the beginning of the movie, but it's when the bridge starts raising while all the cars are on it. One of them is like a watermelon truck, so watermelons are flying everywhere, just causing havoc.
And just pulping, and like people are flying through their windshields. It's fucking hilarious. The guy on his motorcycle falls off into the water, and then another truck slides off into the water.
Oh, and of course, all of this is while AC/DC is playing. Holy shit.
we do need to
who
talk
did the
about.
entire score of this movie.
So the opening credits are playing out, and you're like, oh shit, okay, they got an AC/DC track for this. Neat. And like the opening scene is playing out, and then during the credits, like while all this mayhem is going on, it says full score by AC/DC.
music by AC/DC.
Oh, they're sticking around.
See,
Oh
okay,
man.
In any other circumstances, I would hate that
Yes.
AC/DC scored the movie. But for this,
It's perfect.
It's a match made in heaven.
It really is.
It's funny.
You know, AC/DC is like, it's your middle school, like, first take on being bad, you know, and it's like, you know, that same feeling you were talking about, like being a kid and smashing trucks around. It's like, yeah, we're playing metal, rock. And it has no, like, deeper meaning than that, like, musically.
Yeah,
and
AC/DC was my entrance to hard rock in middle school.
Of course.
Like, it's everybody's is.
And
you know?
it's perfect for that. Like, and it encompasses the entire feel of this film.
Yeah, the whole thing is it definitely has a youthfulness to it. They're very different films, but I enjoy this movie for the same reason that I love Pacific Rim, because it's appealing to my inner child that wants to take my toys and smash them together and make explosions.
Funny because I agree with the comparison, but I think the reason I get frustrated with Pacific Rim is there's too much characters.
I can agree with that. I think a lot of the characters are uninteresting and stupid, but like so much of that movie is just big robot punch big monster.
And it's the best part of it.
And I'm like, yes, more. And that's exactly how I was feeling every time stuff was blowing up. Or at the end when all of the trucks just decide to wreck the gas station, like after they've all snuck out through the sewers. So we just get like 5 minutes of just like trucks and like Caterpillar bulldozers just like ramming into the gas station and like knocking over like the overhanging canopies above the pumps. And then it all just explodes like 3 times. It's awesome.
Explosion.
It's so good.
All one
It's
shot.
so
too.
excessive, and I love it. One of the things I really love too is how they escalate things out of nowhere several times in this movie. But one of my favorite is when we get the introduction to the trucks and them being a threat at the gas station.
Right, they're like circling the gas station
and
like
all
sharks.
of a sudden the owner of the building comes out of nowhere.
Fucking Pat Hingle with his
with a fucking rocket launcher.
that has not been established.
Not at all.
This is not Chekhov's rocket launcher at all. It's out of nowhere.
reversed.
It was not hanging over the mantelpiece or anything.
It wasn't like propped up in his office or anything. We've never seen it before. We just see the trucks driving around, cut to him standing there with the rocket launcher and just fires it. And that was one of those what moments.
Now, what I'll say is, like, from a writing perspective, like, bad form for not, like, having the box. I'm glad it is that way because it's way more fun to laugh at.
In this case,
to react to. But, like, you know, like, if you're actually trying to look at this, like, from a writer's perspective, which is an exercise in futility, to be sure, but then you'd want to establish, like, a crate in his office or something like that. But what I will say is, from a world-building perspective, I totally buy it.
We're
in the South.
It's
the guy's going to have a rocket launcher or something in his back. I buy it.
They justify it a few minutes after that when they go into the basement and they find that he has like 100-something guns.
Yeah, he's got a whole doomsday vault.
Right,
Grenades and stuff
he's
like that, yeah.
So like they set it up after they've already introduced it, which I think is really funny. They just do it after the fact. And for this movie, I much prefer it that way because the reaction to him coming out with the rocket launcher is there's nothing like that.
Yeah,
It's
you
you can only have it once. It can only be the first time you've seen the movie. You get that level of surprise and delight. I loved that. Another thing that I want to talk about that I thought was really fucking funny. So they're holed up in the gas station. The trucks are circling. They figure out that it's the comet or whatever that's calling this. Like, well, we just have to survive 7 more days, and the trucks will run out of gas before then. So like, all we have to do is stay holed up here, and we'll be fine. And then the trucks call in reinforcements in the form of a single bulldozer and a little motorized cart with a machine gun attached to
with
it.
a little turret on it.
It's not even a turret. It's literally like a flat board with wheels under it, a pole coming up out of it, and like a heavy machine gun.
Yeah, it's a BAR. Yeah, it's a BAR sitting on top of it. And it's just on a swivel.
Yeah.
Which brings up a huge point.
It wouldn't have a motor in it. It wouldn't
Well, there are a good deal of sequences where we see things that are non-motorized moving on their own accord. Like there's like, you know, like valves being turned and other stuff like where there's no motorization there.
No.
So
I don't give a fuck though.
No, good. I mean, that's all well and dandy.
But I love that they call in reinforcements and it's just the bulldozer and that dinky little thing that shows up, mows down Pat Hingle and a bunch of the other rednecks in the truck stop, and then beeps to them in Morse code that we won't hurt you, but you have to fuel us up. Then we get a long montage of just miles and miles of Mack trucks lined up down the road.
My favorite part of that shit was the justification they used to go with it. They're like, if they can call in a machine gun cart, they can easily call in a napalm assault.
Yeah, they can call in a truck to hose the place down with napalm, so we better do what they say. And we just get that long montage of them just all like, once again, set to AC/DC.
Hell's Bells.
Set to Hell's Bells specifically. Just gassing up Mack trucks all day.
Is a really poor choice because like it's all like rockin' and fun. Like DC's really AC/DC's really good for that like jovial like we're rockin' and like they're like slaving over these trucks and like refueling them and their hands are all blistered.
Well, right. That's like, the funny thing is that at the end of the day, you're totally right. Like it's supposed to be grim and dark, but it's set to Hell's Bells. And then at the end of the day, Emilio Estevez like stumbles inside and it's like he's acting like he's been like building the fucking pyramids or something, that he's been doing like really hard manual labor for like hours. He's like delirious. His girlfriend is like dabbing at his brow with like a wet cloth. He's got blisters all over his hands.
Right.
And like
they could have just like cut to night or something and like let us see that he's been doing this for days, but it feels like it's all done during the same day.
Right. It feels like
really
he's just been doing it. It's like, bro, you've been standing in the shade gassing up trucks all day. Like, sure, it's a shit menial job, but like it's not like slave labor.
Is it just me, or does Emilio Estevez seem stoned in every scene of this movie?
Oh yeah.
Like, well, I mean, all the actors are probably getting a little.
I think it's pretty funny too that like they got a relatively tall woman to play his love interest, and like Emilio Estevez is already a manlet, so like he looks so tiny compared to her. Oh yeah, but he seems like completely like he seems like heroined out for most of the movie to me. Like he's one of the only ones who doesn't have like manic cocaine energy.
Yeah.
Like Pat Hingle for sure does.
100%.
Pat Hingle is fucking jazzed the fuck up. And so are most of the people. Weird film appearance from Yeardley Smith in this movie, who most of you probably know as the voice of Lisa Simpson. She is a character.
Yeah, she screams. Most of her lines are screamed.
Almost all of her lines are
you
screamed.
You'd have to really have an ear for it to realize.
Like she has that manic cocaine energy too, and it's like Emilio Estevez is just like he just shot up in like the bathroom,
like stumbling through every scene.
Right. Oh, that was so weird. Emilio Estevez is such a weird choice for this movie.
Yeah.
Any other big points, or do you want to move into the book?
If you have comparisons to the story that you want to bring up, I haven't read it.
Yeah, I haven't read it
there are
a
number of sequences that occur the same way. The first big difference, let me preface by saying that I think that the novel, now granted, it's been a long time since I've read it, so my opinions have likely changed.
Sure.
But when I read it, I was like a jaded high schooler kid, and I was actually kind of creeped out by the concept. Or not the concept. I recognize that the concept was goofy, but the execution was so good that it left me creeped out.
That's Stephen King's thing. That's what he's good at, is taking very mundane, kind of silly seeming things and making them scary.
Yes.
That's his whole shtick.
And Trucks does it quite well from my distant memory. The key factors that make the short story legitimately work is that we receive zero backstory, like which the film takes a hard right turn on and displays the big title card explaining exactly why all this stuff is going going to happen before it even does. Weird choice. When, again, the book, you never know why the trucks are coming alive, what their intent is. You're learning along with the characters. It's the same sort of series of sequences. They get held up in a gas station because the trucks start like killing people outside. They know full well that the trucks could just come in and kill them, but they're not. And there's a period of time during the book where you're really on the edge of your seat. It's like, well, why aren't they killing them? They have some sort of purpose, and it's revealed that it's because they need them to refuel.
Right.
And so then they have them go out and do it. And the book does a good job of showing an elapsement of time, and the trucks don't allow them to take breaks or anything. And so I think somebody dies or something, you know, just from like having to go out and keep refueling, and they're not allowed to stop. And it's just the trucks. That's it. That's the only thing that comes alive. We don't know if it's paranormal or what, but it's much better for it, you know, in that respect. And I don't even remember how it ends. But I just remember like the intensity of like the people like sitting in the gas station with like the headlights, you know, focused on them.
Stephen King does suspense really well, and I can very much see that being in his wheelhouse.
If it's just trucks, I want to see a reboot with Amazon self-driving trucks.
Dude, that would be if they, similarly to the Child's Play remake, if they did that today, that would be the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be the fucking answer. You brought up like having backstory for why this is all happening, and the movie addresses this in a very stupid way that I love. And I want to break that down. I think now's the good time for it. There's a couple other things I want to go back and go over, but we'll backtrack.
Sure.
So while Emilio Estevez is resting from his hours slaving over fueling up these trucks, and his girlfriend is gently cooling his brow, he has a very rambling monologue about, now, imagine that you was a group of aliens, right? And you was trying to move to a new place, you know, kind of like you and me would move into a new house, but you get to the house and everything's all dirty and there's grease everywhere. So what do? You get a broom and you clean it up.
You know, you use a broom to clean up the grease.
Right.
Great metaphor.
That's what's happening. They're just the trucks. They're just the broom cleaning us up. And it's just like, okay, Emilio, sure, whatever. So he's implying that the electronics coming to life are paving the way for an alien invasion of the Earth. It's just addressing that scene and not brought up at all again until the very end. When they escape, they make it to the coast. They get on a sailboat with no motor and sail off and into the water. And we get another title card that just says, 2 days after this, a large UFO was shot down by a Russian weather satellite that happened to have a laser cannon and marked for nuclear missiles. And that's the end of the movie.
Oh my god, it's maybe one of my favorite end cards in any movie.
Yeah, dude, like, how the fuck do you bury the lead that powerfully? Like, holy shit. Just at the very end to have a title card be like, it was aliens and the Russian satellite shot them down. Okay? Holy fuck, man. I lost my mind. That was so goddamn good.
It's just a perfectly over-the-top capstone to an already over-the-top movie.
Before the opening credits even finished, the movie had me thinking to myself, God damn, I took way too big of a bong rip before we started this movie. And then I remembered I was totally sober. Like, I was totally sober this entire film. I was just like, but it's made me think like, whoa, the drugs really kicked in. Like, I'm not following this at all. Wait, no, I'm completely here. The movie's not following itself.
Because everybody who was making this movie was on drugs for you.
Yeah. It was outrageous.
It was great.
Like, if anyone ever asks me what the visual interpretation of cocaine is, I would point them to this movie.
Maximum
This
Overdrive,
film,
yeah.
Maximum Overdrive, is an allegory for cocaine.
Honestly, I would narrow it down and get more specific. And if somebody asked me for the visual representation of cocaine, I would say a Mack truck with the Green Goblin's face and glowing red
With
eyes.
AC/DC blasting.
Yeah,
over
blasting AC/DC, which we haven't talked about at all, but that is sort of like the truck's ringleader.
The
Is like
antagonist
this-
of the film.
is like a toy truck with a giant Green Goblin face on the hood.
Where the eyes light up, when the
eyes
engine
light up.
revs.
it. What exactly did it say on the side?
Here comes a big load of joy, or something.
Oh, yeah, here comes another load of joy.
Oh yeah.
But there's a part where like we're following Emilio Estevez as he's walking by it, so it's kind of tracking down it, and for a second all you can see is here comes another big load.
Of joy doesn't make it better.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
You know, if there was ever something to say, your sexual peak, I think that's
Here comes
that's the worst.
Here comes another big load of joy. Yeah, enjoy that while you say it, because after that you'll never get any ever again.
Ever again. God. Oh, literally the worst.
But I thought that the design of that truck was fantastic. Honestly,
Oh, it's
I wish there was a little
delightful.
bit more from that truck. I think they could have taken it a little bit farther.
Yeah, well, they get to the boat, and then suddenly the truck, being a true shinobi, is just there.
That was fucking awesome. I loved that.
And like, it's just turn around and there's an 18-wheeler that they just didn't see. And the truck, it like revs up and it's like, oh shit, it's coming for us. And he gets the rocket launcher out and he fires it at it. And like the flames go around it and you think, oh shit, it's still coming. And it stops and it blows up. And I was like really hoping like, oh yeah, it's still gonna get him.
I do want to acknowledge a little bit more of the setup for that,
Yeah,
because
'cause it is very good.
it's even more fun. We see them pull up at the docks, like, okay, there's the boat, and the shot is framed so out of focus in the foreground. There's a car with like a woman's head sticking out of it, like she's been like choked by the window, and her hand is hanging out of it, and they're all moving towards the boat, and one of the miscellaneous rednecks who's with them like stops.
The rednextras.
The rednecks. Oh,
Redneck
good one.
extras.
Good.
Good
Yeah.
one. Yeah, so one of the rednextras stops and he comes over to the car and it racks focus and you see that she's just got this comically large diamond ring on her hand. And as he's starting to take the ring off of her finger, the camera pans around to show the reverse, and there's the truck right behind him with the Green Goblin face, which is such a
Funniest
fucking
thing.
funny reveal, because like there's no way they would not have noticed that truck getting there. But then it just turns on, the lights come on, and pulps the red extra
Oh,
before they blow it up.
going back to the machine gun on wheels.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way that they deal with it is
Oh,
one of the
it's
most
so-
nonsensical moments that just broke my brain.
Why don't you describe it
Yeah,
then?
please.
So that's during the sequence where they're trying to refill the trucks, and the trucks aren't really allowing them to have any brakes. And they're walking past it, and the machine gun is just swiveling, probably like someone with some fishing line off camera. It's just like swiveling this
sure.
machine gun at them. The characters walk up to it, and one of the guys is like, "Hey, look, we're just going to take a break or something. You wouldn't understand, Mr. Machine Gun." And you get the sense like it kind of wavers for a second that it's acknowledged what he said, and then while they're still walking,
It's proven that the machines understand people
Yeah.
when they talk to them.
The film is well established.
We've seen that multiple times.
they
though,
know,
yeah.
because like before that, the viewer's like, well, we're not going to be able to fuel these pumps without the lights coming on, or without having any electricity, and then the lights come on. So it's like,
right.
cool.
So they can
The film has
definitely
well
understand.
established that they can understand them, and the guy, like, the two guys, like, still next to the turret. Just say like, all right, well, you, Mr. Machine, you wouldn't understand, you know, we're just gonna go and take a break or whatever. All right, listen, friend, who I'm talking to while I'm still next to this machine that can hear me. When I say run, we need to run, and I'm gonna like attack this thing right now.
Well, yeah, he just says at full volume, when I say run, and it's like, the thing could still hear you.
Yeah, and like there's a little bit more dialogue bouncing back after that. Like there's still a moment and nothing. Like the machine does absolutely nothing, and it's like
I love it. It's
And then
so dumb.
and then Emilio Estevez
immediately, like it
pulls
establishes a rule and then immediately breaks
and
it.
Emilio Estevez pulls a grenade out of his pocket and pulls the pin and drops it onto the platform, and they run and it explodes. It's like the easiest way they could have dealt with that.
Yep. They clearly also established that the machine gun can't pivot like up and down at all. It can only like
Right,
move
it can't
horizontally.
tilt. It can pivot, but it can't tilt.
So why didn't any of them just crawl up to it?
Correct. And also that it has a clearly limited ammo box attached to it. That when it runs dry, it has no way of reloading because it's just a gun on a platform. Another one of the things that I did really love is the hysterical waitress character who keeps running outside and screaming at the machines. You can't do this! We made you!
Yeah,
We made you! How can you do this to the people who made you? And until she finally gets shot.
Yeah.
The squibs are great.
The squibs were great.
Yeah.
One weird thing is when they first established the machine gun and the BAR just like starts like firing into all the people
Right,
in the
Pat
restaurant.
Hinkle's the one that it kills first.
And there are no squibs. You see the shot of it firing, and then it cuts
And
to
it
him
cuts
with
to
red
him
on his
and
shirt, and
he
he
has-
falls over.
yeah.
Who's an established character, like well-established character, and he just falls over, and that's the last of him. We don't see him on the ground
And then
afterwards or anything. He just falls behind the counter. That's it. Moving on. And then we get like several, like about 3, like really good squib shots
on the extras.
On the
They
extras.
use the squibs on the extras.
Yeah, it's like two red extras and the waitress, and like they have these fantastic squibs. Like they have like 8 or so just like on their shirts. They're just blue, like blood, like spraying everywhere. It's like, why did they have that for like one of the lead guys? Like,
I can probably tell you why that is from a production standpoint. It's probably because they were shooting other scenes with him during that day, so they didn't have time to squib him up, unlike the other ones.
I could
it
see
probably
that.
took time
Oh,
to squib.
yeah.
all
the
they had to
extras
do,
up.
all they would have had to do was change his shirt instead of setting him up
Yeah.
with squibs and everything. And then, yeah, that's probably true. Still not a great excuse because then you just shoot his death last. You just you just squib him up and kill him. Like that would be the logical way to do it. But that tracks. I think you're probably right about that.
but the ones they do have are great.
They look great.
The squibs are great.
The effects overall are pretty fantastic.
Except for the comet in the sky.
The green aurora in the sky looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't just look bad, it's also like has horrible continuity. Anytime there are expository shots, we see sort of matted into the blackness of the sky an aura borealis sort of effect.
Yeah.
There's a green haze. It's supposed to be the trail of the comet.
Which we see around the Earth in the opening shot when they're talking about the comet. Like the green aura appears.
It's a pretty bad effect, but we only ever see it like in the shots where it's easy for them to mat out and you can see the sky. There's just like a large enough swath of the sky to fill the frame.
If it's too busy, they won't do it.
Yeah, so there are so many of the shots in the film, you get lots of sky, but because there's moving objects, there's like smoke in the air, there's no effect at all, and it's just a black sky.
I also really liked how just a couple of times it's mostly towards the end, and it's completely inconsistent when they do and don't do it, is when people are firing at it and they have little orange like laser bolts for like the bullets like hitting the trucks. Did y'all notice that? They only do it a couple of times. Like the number of times that these people like shoot at the trucks, they do it a lot in the movie, but every now and then there's like little orange like trails for the bullets, and it looks really stupid.
And they could be using tracer rounds, but
No, not these fucking rednecks.
Yeah. There's only a couple of really dumb effects. Those are the big ones.
All of the practical effects are
I
fantastic.
think those are it. Everything else are great.
I think the red green goblin eyes are a bit goofy, but
I
I didn't
it.
mind
I
them as
love
much
that,
as
though.
the other ones.
well, at least those are practical.
I like them because it's a fun kind of hokey. I mean, the aurora in the sky is inconsistent and it looks bad, but I thought it was fun.
Oh, yeah.
also fun and hokey.
100.
It's
you
also
know,
fun
in
and
the same
hokey,
way.
but like what I mean specifically is like all of the stunt work, the explosions, the squibs, like you mentioned, the general like blood and gore stuff is really well done.
They destroy a lot of shit.
And by the end, they straight up like completely destroy that gas station.
Yeah.
And like how many like Mack trucks do they like explode in this movie?
Or
like
crash into stuff. And
I mean, crashing into stuff is a little different. Like you can fix some of that depending.
Yeah, like some of the shots of the trucks crashing into the walls, you could see like it was fake,
you
the
can
trucks
do
would go
those
right,
stunts in ways that you can crash them in with very little damage to the actual truck. But I count like 5 or 6 18-wheelers that they straight up blow up in this movie.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, fan-fucking-tastic.
Awesome.
When this film is on, it is so much fun. And when this film is off, it is very fun to make fun of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just had a little bit of problem with some of the downtime stuff where they like try to focus on the characters. It's like there's no character there. Just like fuck it. I don't give a shit, you know? I think that's really the movie's only down point for me is those sequences in like the latter half, cuz everything else is either legitimately great spectacle
Or worm brain.
or fucking hilarious incompetence.
Yeah, exactly.
Either or. It's so entertaining. I loved it.
Yeah, same.
Should we rate?
Yeah, let's just jump into ratings.
Ben, why don't you start? This was
Okay,
your pick.
yeah. So when I picked this, I knew what we were getting into. I've seen it before, but I knew it was a lot of fun, and it may be a technically bad movie, but, it's one of those movies where it's entertaining, very entertaining, and that makes up for a lot of the bad elements, whether it's the acting or anything else. So I have a lot of fun with this movie. It's peak Stephen King cocaine. Goddamn, cocaine is a hell of a drug. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
Cleveland.
4.5.
Really?
5. Yeah. Honestly, the only reason I'm not giving it a 5 is because I don't want that on record. Like, there were several moments in this film that had me like near infuriated, but it was so good. Like, there was such strong, it got such a strong reaction out of me at those times where it's like, what the fuck? What is this? Great. Like, and you know what? Good. I love a film that has the balls to like just not give that much of a shit. Good on it. And yeah, no, those scenes are nonsense and garbage, and I loved it. Yeah, 4.5 for me.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that. I'll just expand on what you were saying, Ben. This is maybe technically a bad movie, but it sure was not a bad time. It's going to be
That's a great way to put it.
It's going to be a 4 out of 5 for me as well.
It's rare that a film with such a budget is so bad that it's good. Very often, a large budget can take that away. Because like Pacific Rim is still like I think trying to be good. It knows what it is, but it's still trying. Whereas this film
has a degree of self-awareness, but it is still trying to be a good film, for sure.
And this film,
I think it succeeds.
Oh, yeah.
Most part.
Absolutely. Whereas this film succeeds because of the positive features and the explosions, but also
the bad stuff is
great.
funny.
Yeah. And that's uncommon. I usually, like, when I'm making fun of dialogue sequences that are that bad, it's because of, like, it's in lower budget films, it's The Room, it's, stuff like that.
Well, I want on record that the person who did the most caterwauling about having to watch this movie rated it the highest.
Yep.
So
yeah, low expectations.
We have an average rating of 4.2 out of 5 pods for Maximum Overdrive. If you haven't seen it and you like explosions and things being knocked over and just general nonsense tomfoolery, I could not recommend this film more.
If I had a definition of a great midnight horror movie, it would be something
Holy
like
shit,
this.
man. Yeah, like...
Because this movie will keep you fucking awake.
This movie made me wish I had a fucking case of hams next to me or something. Like, I wasn't drinking enough during this movie. I felt like...
It drinks for you.
This is a yeehaw motherfucker movie. Like...
it lives up to its name.
Yeah, and that's what you said at the end.
Maximum
That's what you said
Overdrive.
exactly what you said at the end of the last episode, Ben. That it is the most aptly titled film ever, and it
Yes.
and it fucking is. Like, Maximum Overdrive is the perfect title. Fuck yeah, check out this movie, 4.2 out of 5 pods. And I think on that note, it's probably time for a word from our sponsor this week.
Yep. We are in deep waters, boys. We are in the waters of sponsorship.
Why are we
sailing away?
Deep waters.
We're deep in the waters, sailing away.
Of sponsorship. We're swimming in money.
Yep. We're rocking in cash because we are so sponsored. We have so many sponsors to choose from. You know, we're just the bells of the ball. And what do you do when you just can't decide which sponsor you want to go with? Well, you go with Parambits and Sons and Nephews Incorporated sponsorship guide. If you're trying to find a sponsor, go with Parambits. They'll cover every bit of the parameter. Parambits sponsors Sons and Nephews Incorporated. Get your sponsors and know why. Thanks, Parambits.
Man, that was a great sponsor.
Man, I sure am grateful for the support and sponsorship of great brands like Parambits. We here at the Pod People would be nothing without our fantastic sponsors. But more importantly, we wouldn't be who we are without our listeners.
Before we close out, I have two things I want to talk about really quick.
Okay.
The first thing I want to talk about is the movie The Hunt getting canceled.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Good call.
So this,
what's in the news?
The Hunt was an upcoming Blumhouse horror movie.
Scheduled to come out on my birthday this year.
Yeah, essentially it was kind of redneck purge. It was a bunch of rural people getting hunted by rich elites.
As a matter of fact, one of them in the trailer refers to them as the globalists.
Yes.
Yikes.
It seemed like it was essentially The Purge meets The Most Dangerous Game.
What I read
Fever Dream of Alex Jones.
It was originally supposed to be titled Red State versus Blue State.
No shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That I did not know.
Whoa.
I did.
Yeah.
I was reading that it did get canceled.
Yes, it got canceled because of the recent shootings.
Its theatrical release was canceled. I imagine it will probably still be distributed. We might see picked up. We might see it picked up on VOD. I mean, they spent money on making the movie. I think they will release it somehow and somewhere. They might. I did see that they might also just hold on to it and release it at
Not uncommon.
at a time that is less.
Good luck.
Yeah, right.
Good luck finding a time where you can get away with that.
Right. What I found really funny about it, though, and we won't go too deep into this because this is not a politics podcast.
Nope.
And I'd like to keep it that way.
Yes.
But one of the other reasons that it got canceled is because there was all kind of argument on the internet about whether this was an anti-conservative or anti-liberal film. There were a lot of people saying that it was about conservatives hunting down the poor working class, and there were people who were saying that it was about rabid liberals hunting down Trump supporters. So... goddamn, I want to see this movie now. I really, before I thought it just looked kind of fun, but now, I want to see it.
It's got my curiosity peaked now.
Yeah. I'm just curious to see like how far they take it, like how political they get, or how much of it is allegory, how much of it is just.
I doubt it's going to be
pushed under
fucking.
the rug.
I doubt it's going to be all that political.
Yeah,
Honestly, I
same.
feel like people are just getting fucking. It's just a part of outrage culture. Like people need something to be pissed off about.
Yeah, if folks on both sides of the aisle are like finding ways to project their
Right.
their offenses onto it, that's usually a sign that it's lukewarm.
Right,
Honestly.
for sure.
It probably doesn't have that much to say.
It also puts a bad taste in my mouth that like in the wake of these fucking tragedies and mass shootings and stuff, that like the industries that are suffering from it are the film industry and the video game industry, that like those are the things that are being targeted as like responsible. It's like
Right. And it's like you look at like video game and film distribution across nations as opposed to other things. It's like, oh, hey,
Well,
everyone has those, but
Yeah.
yet.
right.
It's a weird scapegoat that's been coming up more lately, is like horror movies and video games cause violence.
Right, which is it's fucking patently
hate to see
untrue.
it.
Well, it's-
you do
yeah,
hate to see it, and I have no problem saying that too on this our horror podcast. Like, I very much resent the idea that like horror movies and violent films and video games like make people violent, because it's just not fucking true. Like, if anything, that's the whole goal of our show, is to watch horror movies and find joy in them and have fun talking about them, and I hope that people who listen to the show get the same thing out of it. It's like we're never fucking up in here talking about like, oh yeah, these movies make me want to go out and kill somebody, and you should too. If you like blood and gore, then you should murder people.
Yeah, well, it's just folks who don't have an understanding of what suspension of disbelief is. It's as simple as that. It's like you haven't learned what a movie is.
No, dude, it's worse than that. It's people who know full goddamn well that violent movies and video games have nothing to do with in-world violence, but they'd rather make them a scapegoat than focusing on the things that actually do cause those problems. That's what's more disgusting about it. Is it's not based in ignorance. It's calculated.
Yep. Well, if you want to have a legitimate opinion on it, just look up third-party statistics.
And we might see it at some point if it ever comes out.
If it gets distributed somewhere, like, I want to cover it for sure. I want to watch that movie.
But the other thing I wanted to mention is one of the movies we predicted came out this weekend.
Yee!
We don't have the full box office because it came out this weekend, and the weekend isn't over yet at the time of recording this. So we don't have box office, but we do have Rotten Tomatoes score. So 47 Meters Down, Uncaged came out. Let's see here. Tease, you predicted it would get a 10 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yikes.
Cleve, you predicted it would get a 7 on Rotten Tomatoes. And I predicted it would get a 26 on Rotten Tomatoes.
If it gets a 9, I'm going to be pissed.
I don't think it
I
did
don't
that
either.
bad.
It's currently sitting at a 50%.
Wow.
On Rotten Tomatoes. So.
Yeah, I was cynical about that one.
I was
The
pretty
trailers
cynical
make
about
it
it.
look kind of fun, actually.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
the thing, though.
It has like an underwater temple in it with sharks, and I'm here for that.
I was so cynical about it because Ben and I watched the first one,
Which I haven't
last
seen.
year, and we thought it was so boring that we didn't even want to talk about it on the podcast.
Wow, rough.
That it was so unremarkable and lame that we would have had maybe like 10 minutes worth of content to talk about it. So I was just like, oh, they're making another one? Fuck that. But 50% is still not great. But it's not.
It's not 7.
Nope, it's not as bad as I thought it was. All right, so that's a point for you, Ben. And we'll have to wait and see what the box office is.
Yeah.
We can do an updated Rotten Tomatoes when we check that next time. But I would be very surprised if it's gone below a 10 by that point.
Yeah, it probably won't dip
I think
that
it's
low.
safe. I think it's safe to say that no matter what, you've probably won that.
I
one.
will say for box office, Tease and I both predicted 12 million, and you predicted Cleve 4 million. So we'll see how the chips
That's
fall.
going to be a little bit closer, I think. Is that everything?
Yeah, that's everything I had to talk about.
Well, gentle listeners, we thank you as always for listening. next week, we'll be talking about another new film, the brand new Ready or Not. Is that what it's called?
Not starring Margot Robbie.
Not starring, starring not Margot Robbie. I have been getting non-stop Hulu ads for this movie for the last couple of weeks. Looks fun.
It looks fun.
We'll see. It kind of gives me a Your Next vibe, but campier.
It's like your Next
vibes.
meets Clue.
Yeah.
Clue meets your... Yeah, that's a good combination of the two, I think. And we'll see if it lives up to that. So tune in next week for our thoughts on Ready or Not.
Which is rich elites killing rich elites.
That's right.
So that's
something everybody
safer,
that's something everybody can get down with. But until then, if you like the show, if you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, then we'd ask that you take a few minutes to leave us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. If you can rate and review, please do so. We would appreciate that. You can follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod. I've tried to start doing some mini reviews on the Twitter account for just shit that I watch that we don't talk about on the show, trying to actually make our Twitter a little bit more interesting. So if you're interested in that, then follow us at PodPeoplePod on Twitter, and also check us out on Letterboxd at PodPeoplePod. You can find the entire list of all the films we've talked about on the show, which is pretty extensive at this point. We've been going for a while, and it also has our average ratings and the links to the episodes where we talk about those films. So yeah, check that out. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Van Awesome. I'm retweeting slightly fewer Epstein-related stuff, so...
Yay.
You can follow me at Mr. Sheets.
You find me occasionally tweeting for at Light Arc Studio, but most importantly, you can find our work if you check out It Stares Back, our wonderful, wonderful strategy game and horror game that we've been working on for the past few years now. That's been out in early access for a minute. And if you really want to hang out with us, come and join our Discord. You can find it off of lightarcstudio.com.
There's also a link to that on the Light Arc Twitter account as well.
It's on the Steam page too. If you want to reach us, you absolutely can. And tell you what, if you join our Discord, pick a faction, and you let us know in the town square that you found us through the podcast, I'll send you a free key to It Stares Back.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, first person to do it.
Just
I'll
one.
Just the one. It's a contest. Hey guys, I got a big old contest here.
Send you a free key to the game.
So first person to join the Discord, it mentions pod people. I'll send you a free key.
Fantastic. Great idea. We did just release a new update with our map editor. So if you are one of those people who likes building RTS maps, if you did that in Warcraft or StarCraft or stuff like that, we have something similar. Simpler, but you can make some really fantastic stuff on there, and that is available in the game. It Stares Back. Check that out. Thanks as always for listening. Until next time, I'm going to go bury my face in another mountain of cocaine and keep this party train rolling. Toot toot!